I have with me a very special guest, a very old friend. We go back a lot of years, decades, and her name is Amy Scobee. So, hello, Amy.
Hi, Ron.
I'll tell you how I'd like to start, and I think a lot of our listeners like to hear, how did you get in Scientology? If you could go over that first, I'd appreciate it, okay?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on your podcast. So, in terms of when I got in Scientology and how I got in Scientology, it was when I was 14 years old. And my mom had been in Scientology already for probably a year or something like that. And I knew she was going to classes, but I didn't know anything about Scientology. One time a phone call came in and said, hi, is this Amy? And I said, yes. Hi, this is Brett from the Church of Scientology. And I said, my mom's not home. And they said, no, we're calling to talk to you. I'm like, you're calling to talk to me? I'm 14 years old. What do you want with me? I don't know you. It was really weird. It spiked my interest. Like, why are they wanting to talk to me? And he said, he wants to do an interview with me. And he heard all sorts of wonderful things about me and blah, 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 blah. So I asked my mom if I could come in and speak to him and find out. It created like a mystery for me. And I wanted to find out what this was all about and why was he interested in me. So I went down to the Scientology mission in Bellevue at the time. I'm 14 years old. My mom was with me, but she didn't come into the interview with me. She took me there, but didn't come into the interview. And basically, they, convinced me to do a communications course. I did that, and then I went straight on staff. And I literally left school at 9th grade and became a full-time staff member. The first job that I did was body routing. So I'm 14 years old, out on the street in the city, asking people to come with me into the Church of Scientology. So that was quite an experience. I had a lot of people ask me, if I was a whore, or come with me. And then when they get there to a quote unquote church, this isn't what I thought it was. But anyway, it was quite an experience. So one of the first things I want to talk about is I was 14 years old. My job was a course administrator, which is the assistant to the course supervisor for the academy there. The person that was the academy supervisor, his name was Daryl. He was, I believe, 35 or something, in his 30s or something, married. And I was 14. And to put a long story short, he had me stay behind one time and had sex with me there in the academy on church premises and on the way home in his car. And that is
terrible. It's terrible.
And, I didn't tell anybody. I was completely scared, and it finally came up, and I don't know how it did, but it finally came up. And right away, as a 14-year-old, I was put into lower conditions and made, signed treason, the condition of treason.
Amy, before you go on, let's explain what we mean by lower conditions. And I'll just give it a thumbnail. It is something that a person has to do. There's a formula for these lower conditions, and it's done to somebody who has gone below the status of being a normal person, and they're considered to be a liability or somebody who's done something bad, who has to work their way up into the group again to have a normal status. But at any rate, anybody who's put in a normal condition is the person at fault in something. If I can, am I saying that correctly in your case?
I think that's correct. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I was made to do the lower conditions. That person was put into lower conditions as well. And I was made to, get everyone's signature that I'm accepted back in the group for my crime.
Because he raped you, right?
That's right. I mean, obviously, like I'm 14, even though, people can say this was so many years ago, get over it. The reason why I'm bringing it up right now is because it was covered up. My parents were never told. My father was never told. That man would have been in jail. And as I understand it, that person went on to continue to commit child with
Wow.
other minors and did go to jail for it, but Scientology had covered it up. And one of the things that I learned was that Scientology handles its own. You don't tell the police, you don't go outside. It was one of the first lessons that I learned, is that anything that happens bad in Scientology is contained within Scientology, is not, your dirty laundry doesn't get aired, quote unquote. And it's dangerous because you can have serious crimes going on and then they're covered up and kept within. And so justice never takes place, or, criminals don't get put away and things like that. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I can see that. In other words, it's done for the greater good, as they say. In other words, don't bring any shame on Scientology. You want to come off as this pristine, pure religion where nobody does anything bad and everybody is the highest ethical standard on this planet. It's horrible, but here's a firsthand experience with you, Amy. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I just had to say that, okay?
Right. And it is, a long time ago, but I bring it up because that is the way Scientology operates. And it's always going to be the way that Scientology operates because it's in their policy. So if you have family members in Scientology, I recommend you get them out. But that's just the first thing that I wanted to cover. Then at 16, I joined the Sea Org. My mom signed away, parental consent for me to go into the Sea Org. She was pressured into that. She was told that I would continue schooling, which I did not see another day of schools after I left, and that I would come home and visit, which, I think in like a 17-year period, I had 1 3-day vacation, and it was tied in with business at the same time where I came to Seattle. And, it was just really not something that you did. You did not come home and visit family or anything like that. So I went to the Sea Organization. I went to Los Angeles. It was the first time I was ever on an airplane, flying into LA on Halloween. That's when I arrived. I'm 16. I arrive in LAX on Halloween. It was a funny farm, but no one was there to pick me up. So I'm stranded. I don't even know who to call. So I get a phone book and I'm looking for, anything Scientology. I'm just calling all these reception places,
Right.
and nobody was really there. Finally, I got somebody to come and get me, but that was my first experience. I've got a million experiences, obviously, with 30 years of this stuff. But I went to, the first thing I did was training to be part of the flag network of procurement officers to get people to flag. So I went to Copenhagen, and I was stationed there for a couple months. And that at 16 years old, being in Copenhagen, I didn't know the currency. I didn't know any languages. I didn't know anything. And I was traveling to different places and within the Europe, like to Paris and different things like that by myself at 16.
Okay. Were you there to recruit people? Is that what your job was?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Then I ended up going to Flag in Florida. So, and I was there for a couple of years. One of the first things that happened was my first husband, David Paul, and I had sex before we got married. And so we were both sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force. Again, I'm 16 years old in the Rehabilitation Project Force, where you have to wear a black jumpsuit, run everywhere you go, call everybody sir, and you're segregated from the rest of the crew. And you're doing, running laps around up and down to the 10th floor and back, for penalties for not making time targets and all sorts of stuff. So this was my introduction to Flag, really. We got married on my 17th birthday because my parents said I couldn't get married till I was 17. So I got married on my 17th birthday. And then after that, I went into the Commodore's Messenger org after I got off the RPF, shortly after I got off the RPF.
Like what year, Amy, what year was that? I'm just curious.
1980.
Okay.
1980. I was in Florida. I got married in 1980. I stayed on the RPF and he got off. He was 26 years old. I was 16. He got off the RPF because he knew so many different languages and they needed him for a language project or something. And meantime, I stay on the RPF as a 16-year-old. But anyway, so finally I got off the RPF, and then I went to into the CMO. And from there, I went to Los Angeles more on recruitment. And then I ended up going back to the RPF. And from there, from the whole RPF was taken up to the INT base in 1983, I think it was.
And just for our listeners, we're talking about the INT base in Hemet, California.
Which is Hemet, yeah, International Headquarters for Scientology Management.
Right.
Golden Era Productions is located there. And so I went up there in 1983 and was part of the construction team. So this is where
Amy, were you on the construction team that built the music studio?
Yes. Yes. Wow. I did all the electrical and electronics logistics for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a job, I'll tell you, man.
It was extensive, but this is where I learned to not sleep. I mean, we literally would work around the clock for days and days and days and days and weeks and months on end. I went for 2 years, I averaged 4 hours sleep a night. And that's where you go, maybe I'll get 6, but then I'll go 2 days with 0, like really just frying my brain, really. I mean, and it's all this emergency footing of everything's got to be done now. It's all an emergency because the planet is depending on us to get this building done or to get this, whatever we're doing.
That's the modus operandi. It has to be done right now because every man, woman, and child on this planet depends on us getting this done. I know exactly what you're talking about. And when you're talking about sleep deprivation, when I got there in 85, I had the same thing doing music. I remember we would be up in the studio that was up on the hill. It was called the Mid-Res, which is short for Middle Reservoir. And they put there was a studio up there. And I can remember working up there and trying to get some sleep. We would lay down on the carpeted floor and cover ourselves up with sheets of styrofoam insulation for blanket. I mean, just to get any sleep. Listen, sleep deprivation is a punishment. You know that.
Yeah.
But
it's actual torture. It's actual torture.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Continue.
Okay, so after I got off the rehabilitation project force, which they did a review and found that my assignment was incorrect, so I was reprieved after 2 years of full-time DEX. So I was taken out of there, and then I went into Commodore's Messenger Org International, which is where I worked. I was basically there for almost 20 years. And I did a lot of positions there, and I'm not going to bore anybody with that. But one of the things with the being at the INT base is you're secluded, you've got tight security, you can't leave the property without going through security or showing an approval from your superior of why your purpose for going off the property. You have to be escorted. You can't make a phone call without security or another person from the internal personnel listening in on the phone so that they can kind of guide you not to say anything you're not supposed to say, or make sure that the people who are talking to you don't say something that you shouldn't hear. If they're antagonistic, they can find out if there's a situation. There's always somebody listening. I remember when my uncle was the commander of the shuttlecraft Challenger that exploded in 1986. And I was invited to go to that takeoff. Of course, I didn't go because you're not encouraged to do such things. Never having enough time for family.
Right.
And when I found out about it, it was because that's right when L. Ron Hubbard had passed. And we were listening on the radio to see what the news was going to be about L. Ron Hubbard passing. And instead, it was overshadowed by the fact of the Challenger disaster. And people were actually happy that had occurred because it pushed under the carpet any highlights on L. Ron Hubbard's death.
Wow.
So for me, I had to write a petition to be able to go and call my family. And when I did, there had to be people listening. And, you know, I mean, it's a traumatic thing. And and you're not allowed to grieve with your family. In fact, you don't even grieve in Scientology. If you do, it's considered human emotion and reaction, and it's penalized, like
Yeah.
case on post. And in fact, it's an offense that you can be sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force for if you dramatize or display case on post. It's an RPF-able offense.
Let's get into that a little bit, because I think this is the first time anybody's ever talked about case on post.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about here is, let's say somebody were to give you an order that was undoable and you knew it. If you were to shout back at them, "What the hell are you talking about? Are you nuts?" That normal response, what you would give if somebody said, "Look, I want you to knit 5 wool sweaters in the next 30 seconds." You might say, "What, are you nuts?" But that response would be considered case on post.
That's
In other
right.
words, you'd be dramatizing those things that are not part of you, the actual spiritual being, but they would be considered additives that you've picked up over the millennia. And these are the things that you're supposed to get rid of by receiving auditing. So anything other than "yes, sir," or "no, sir," or "sorry, sir, I can't do anything but a polite response" would be considered case on post. So in other words, you can't act rationally. You follow me? You have to act like a robot. Am I describing that pretty accurate?
I think that's perfect. And robot is right. Like, here's another. I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but since you bring that up right now, one of the main things about Scientology is, and I studied all about, when I left, all about cults and mind control, because I was trying to figure out, what was I in? What was this thing that had such a grip on me? And how did it have such a grip on me that I couldn't think for myself? And I became like a robot with stimulus response, where you're supposed to stand up and clap at this time. You're supposed to say "yes, sir" at this time. You're supposed to just lay down your life. And what I discovered, one of the books, which was great, was Releasing the Bonds and Combating Cult Mind Control, both by Stephen Hassan. Those books are fantastic, and I recommend them to anyone. But what I found was so fascinating, and is one of the things that helped me kind of release out of it, is the components of mind control, which is behavior control, information control, control of your thoughts and emotions. And these things are so true in Scientology. I mean, behavior control, that's all they do. I mean, that's all they do. I can give 8,000 examples in 2 seconds. But information control is fascinating, because when I was at the INT base for 20 years, I didn't know what was going on in the world. We were kept, number one, none of us had televisions. We didn't watch TV. We didn't know anything about what was going on in the world, besides the sheets that they would give us, that was just the information about what was going on in the Scientology world. And then we had the Scientology events, which was a bunch of propaganda saying how much we're expanding, how we're a household word, name, and how everyone is just so accepting of Scientology, which in the real world is so far from the truth, it's not even funny.
No, you're right about that. You're absolutely right. I sometimes will tell people I'm a writer and I wrote a book about Scientology, and they'll say, "Oh, really? Really? Yeah, yeah." And they're acting very cautiously, because they don't know if I wrote a puff piece about it or I closed them. And once I mention that, I say, "Hey, listen, I'm telling you about the bad experiences I had, and I had to escape from it." Then they open up and that cult. They use words I'm not going to use on this program. And they'll say, "They're nothing but a god darn cult," and then they open up. I've never met anybody who had any other experience, any other reaction than that, and tell them about my book. I never met one.
And that's the same with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
By the
I've
way,
had
oh,
so
hang on a second. You wrote a book. Why don't you just mention it here?
yeah, okay. So yes, I wrote a book. It's called Scientology Abuse at the Top, and I've got a copy right here.
If somebody wants to buy it, where do they get it?
They can go to Amazon. So it's on Kindle, and it's also an audiobook. And it's an audiobook recorded by somebody else. I just had somebody else do it. But it's on Kindle as a ebook.
Okay, and show us the cover again. There you go.
The position that I held for the longest and probably enjoyed the most was for the Watchdog Committee member for Celebrity Centers. I was responsible for establishing the Celebrity Center like in Los Angeles and setting it up where you know, the renovations and the staffing of it and the training of them and uniforming and all that kind of stuff. And plus I was away from the int base while I was on project, running several other projects, getting that place built and established. So it was such a dichotomy because I was training these people to be, to look nice, to have personal integrity, to have a service attitude towards celebrities, to always put on the best face and this kind of thing, compared to when I would go back home to the int base where everyone was being denigrated and pounded and thrown in lower conditions, thrown in the lake if they didn't comply with things on time. And it was just like such a dichotomy.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a release. But the reason why I bring it up is because even though it's beautiful and glitzy and has celebrity attached to it, don't let that deceive you, because it's like that to pull celebrities in so that they can be used. And they can be used to promote Scientology as if it's normalized because the celebrities in there. And it is not normal. The strategy from L. Ron Hubbard was to make celebrities into walking success stories of Scientology so that they will promote it and then get people into Scientology, just like you do with Adidas or something like that. You've got Michael Jordan holding up a tennis shoe and everybody suddenly wants the tennis shoe. So Tom Cruise is like that, you know, people go, they associate, it must be cool because Top Gun's a Scientologist. Well, you know, it's just a deception and it's just a strategy to get people into Scientology. So that's one thing that I wanted to say, because I contributed to that falsehood by creating the Celebrity Center. And you know, at the time, I'm thinking it is the right thing to do. But when you take a look at it, I probably contributed to a lot of people coming into Scientology through those actions. So that's why I want to make it known, is because there's an endorsement by a celebrity or a celebrity is doing something that doesn't, you still have to do your research. That does not make it something that is good or okay. Do your own research and think for yourself.
Okay, so Amy, do you ever feel bad about that?
I feel that I've been doing what I can to warn people for many years now. So, yeah.
Forgive yourself. We were all duped, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
We were all duped. We thought we were doing something great for everybody. And that's the biggest hook of all. You think by you promoting Scientology or getting everybody to be part of it, that you're going to help every man, woman, and child on the planet. Truth, I think it was one of the greatest scams that ever existed.
Yeah, and scam is it's a false religion. It's
it's a cult.
It's a total cult. Well, I was really shocked when I watched about Jim Jones.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen the documentaries on it, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is so exactly what was going on in Scientology, aside from drinking the Kool-Aid. But I wouldn't doubt that they would do that too, because they're so radical. This is where I started turning against the ways of Scientology because of your son, honestly, to be blunt. David Miscavige, he started beating people. He may have been doing it all along, I don't know, but I started witnessing him beating people and confining people. And knocking them down and threatening them and, making them feel degraded. And I witnessed, I mean, it's not just the physical attack that he would do on people, which I witnessed dozens of that. Strangling around. I mean, he even did that to me. One time we were at Celebrity Center, and he wasn't happy with a speech that was written. I think Ron Miscavige, your son, Ronnie, had helped me to write a speech that he was supposed to deliver, and he didn't like it. But he's there. It's right before he's supposed to go out. I guess he didn't have time to read it until then, and he didn't like it. So he came over and grabbed me around the neck and throttled me like this, saying, next time I do a speech at Celebrity Center, and this is in front of all my juniors and stuff, next time I do a speech at Celebrity Center, you're going to the RPF. And so you kind of think, well, maybe he was doing that in play or whatever, but he wasn't. I know he wasn't. That was not play. And right after that, Shelley said to me, would you like to be the WDC for Scientology? Because we want all organizations to be as beautiful as Celebrity Center that I had just created, because I think it was a grand opening or something.
Wow.
But anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm being strangled and threatened over here and asked for a promotion within 10 minutes over here. But
it's nuts.
talk about confusing. Yeah.
It's nuts. It ain't confusing. Crazy. Operated on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you never knew. You never knew. All of a sudden, he would just fly off. Like we're having a normal meeting, and all of a sudden, he would be up on the table and lunged onto Jeff Hawkins or Wendell Reynolds or Mark Yeager or something. One time, Mark Yeager, his whole face is all scratched up, the top of his head, and because he's bald, you can see and his face is all scratched. And I asked his assistant, I said, what happened? And she said, I can't talk about it. So I asked him, I said, what happened to you? And he goes, I fell in a bush.
Oh, boy.
So I said, okay. So then I started asking his assistant, I said, you can't talk about it, but what actually happened? Miscavige basically punched him and shoved his face into a bush. And another time, Mark Yeager had a cast on his foot, walking on crutches. And I said, what happened to your leg? He goes, I fell. And I said, okay, what really happened? I fell off of where the castle is, and there's this huge landing, and it goes down probably feet or something like that. Apparently he accidentally jumped off of that. Well, what I found out was that Miscavige ordered somebody to take a car and chase after him, and they ran him off the edge of this thing, and he broke his ankle when he fell over that edge.
Right.
That concrete edge. But anyway, and then he also put Yeager in a cage. He made him build a bamboo cage out by it's on a certain part of the property up at the end base, and he was in this thing for a couple of years.
It's not that he stayed in there 24 hours a day, though, but he lived in that cage, right?
He lived in that cage. I don't know if he was there 24 hours a day. Gary Moorhead would know, because he went there all the time, and he was putting security on him and stuff. So
look, I'm not trying to mitigate that. Don't get me wrong, but I've heard that same story. But I understand he lived in the swamp in this bamboo thing that he built, and it was like a cage. And
yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine him living there 24 hours a day, though. But that's.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he was doing manual work around it or something like that, but that's where he was not allowed to go anywhere else on the property.
That's exactly what I heard. He made to do hard manual labor out there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so this is how you treat another human being, regardless of how.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to excuse it, please.
Oh, I know you're not. I know you're not. You're so far from doing that. I understand.
Yeah.
It's just, I saw it and I didn't do anything at the time, and it's, somehow you kind of rationalize that well, that's the thing. How I got out is I finally started realizing I am rationalizing insanities.
Right.
My mind is making these things okay. And as soon as I realized that I was doing that, then I started seeing things for what they were. And I would say, this is not okay. This cannot happen. This is illegal. How is this the top of Scientology? And it's the most insane place that you could ever go to.
Yeah.
I don't wish this on anyone. So if this is the best, how is that the case? You know, what am I actually doing?
Yeah.
So
No, I agree. I agree. And I mean, even the verbal beatings, I would see him dish out. In my book, they were worse than a physical beating. I saw him denigrate people, and they just were stopped in their tracks and just were made to feel like a piece of crap. You know that?
I know. Sometimes it's worse than the physical beatings.
Yeah.
It's evil, and you know, it's seriously evil. It's unbelievably evil. One of the things that he also had us do, there was a couple things. One was he had us running around a pole nonstop for like hours and hours and hours in our uniforms. And even one person who had diabetes was being made to run around, and she collapsed, and she was put into a wheelchair and pushed around the thing to continue to do it. Like, don't be case on post.
Wow.
I mean, she could have dropped and died, you know. I mean, it's so insane. Like, what was the purpose of that other than succumb to my wishes and you are to do blah? And he put us on the purification. I was on the purification program for 8 months straight, 5 hours a day, 5,000 niacin. It wrecked my body. And this is when I was like, you know what? No matter what I have to do to get off this property, I'm doing it. Because all I knew is when I was sitting there in this sauna burning to death, and he had us doing it because he said he realized that the reason why we're all such screw ups is because of our drug history. I mean, I have almost nothing, you know. And so it's just insane. It's a stupid, insane solution. So now it's like, okay, all of you terrible executives, you're going to go sit in the sauna for hundreds of hours, you know. Anyway,
that sauna, what is the temperature in that sauna when you're in there?
Oh, I don't know, 100 and something degrees. It's really hot.
Like 130. I know it's hotter than a normal sauna that you'd go in just to sweat. I do know that.
Yeah, yeah. So I started planning my escape. Finally, they sent me, because I was being defiant, and they sent me to the Rehabilitation Project Force in Florida. So that's really far away from Hemet, California. I was happy about that, at least. I spent a couple years on the RPF there. I was thinking I could rehabilitate myself away from the int base. However, I was saying some of the things that were happening at the int base, and then they came down hard on me because as a liar type of thing. And I was sent to the RPF's RPF, and I wasn't supposed to come out until approval was received by the int base, which wasn't going to happen. So anyway, it was just nuts. I made the local people get me off the RPF's RPF.
Why don't you just explain a little bit what you mean when you say the RPF's RPF?
Okay, so the RPF is supposed to be the lowest of the low in the Sea Organization, where people who are considered in treason or you know, need to be cast aside for rehabilitation full-time. They do full-time decks and everything like that. When you're in the RPF, if you totally mess up again inside the RPF, you're relegated to the RPF's RPF, and you have even less privileges, where you are segregated from everyone. You're isolated. You're under 24-hour security watch, and there's a minimum time that you have to be in there, and which is weeks. And you do hard manual labor and a few hours of rehabilitation where you're writing down your crimes and so forth. So I've done that several times, the RPF. I've done the RPF like 4 times, and the RPF.
That would be like if you went to prison and then they would send you to solitary confinement.
Yes. Yeah. You're segregated from everyone else and put under your own intensive handling. That was really nasty. I mean, I've done some serious I remember when I was in the RPF at the int base one time, they had at the Happy Valley, the place that we had in Hemet, it was kind of like a little ranch or something like that. They had a big dump site, which was garbage for years from the base, I guess. And it was a huge mountain. And I was working, and it's been there for a long time. And I was working with a couple other people who were also on the RPF to take that old garbage, put it in a dump truck, like shovel it into a dump truck and take it to the actual dump.
Wow.
And that stuff had been there for years. It was full of maggots. It was wet. It was slimy. We're up in this mountain of garbage, slinging these old bags that are breaking open as we sling them onto this dumpster. Anyway, oh man, that was one time. Guy named Damien, who was working with me, slung his thing and all the maggot juice just flies all over me. And I was like, what am I doing here? What did I do to deserve? I mean, I'm so innocent. I'm in my teens. What did I do to deserve this? I'm here to try to help people.
Yeah.
And am I so evil? Like, I got so introverted. One time I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force because of a needle reaction on the E-meter. So they said that I was thinking about L. Ron Hubbard when I had a quote unquote rock slam, which is an agitated movement of the E-meter. And so I was sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force. What does a person do about that? All you can do is try to figure out what's wrong with your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a complete, total devastation of a person. I didn't physically do anything. I don't know if I was thinking. No, I wasn't thinking about L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying.
At best, it would introvert you and put you totally inside.
For years, I'm on 2 years. I was sent away for that.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of, I mean, I can get very angry about it. I could get very emotional about it, but I just got to put it behind me. But yeah, and warn people that their means of ethics and justice doesn't exist. So don't go anywhere near it.
I think this is a story that had to be told, and I'm glad you're here, Amy. I really am.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I didn't realize I would even have so much. Like when you said, forgive yourself, I almost went into tears because, oh, don't get me started. I'm not going to talk about that right now. It's true. It's true. You need to be able to forgive yourself. Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Okay.
So that was the Rehabilitation Project Force in Florida. So then I got out. I finally left. It was my husband, Matt Pesch, that helped me get out, because in my mindset, I couldn't abandon a group that I swore loyalty to. I couldn't do it. I felt like I just couldn't break through that. And Matt didn't have that idea at all. He was like, screw this place. I mean, it's complete insanity. What's our future here? There's nothing. There's no future here. It's insane. You're never going to get off the Rehabilitation Project Force. Who's going to approve that? Because I witnessed what I witnessed, and David Miscavige is being held up as a guru in Scientology. So if I have any sort of disagreement and I don't come to that and say and repent and everything like that to them, then I'll never be able to have my own mind. Anyway, he was wonderful. And he said, let's get out of here. And so we devised a plan. I told him I wanted to leave. They were doing fitness boards at the time. And I thought, oh, perfect. I'll just let them know that I want to leave and they'll let me leave. And instead it worked the opposite. They thought, whatever, I'm not even going to try, but it was hard to get out of there. Finally, Matt and I were put under 24-hour guard, separated, put under 24-hour guard, 2 months of nonstop rice and beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's the only thing we were fed. And hard manual labor with intensive security checking. And the questions being asked are, have you ever committed an a crime or anything like that? Like done anything wrong? Have you ever done anything wrong? So it's just endless. And it took Matt looking straight into the camera and saying, because it's being videoed and the confessionals are going to up to the int base. He looked right into the camera and said, that's it. I've had enough. If you don't let me out of here by tomorrow at noon, I am busting through the gates. I am taking Amy and we are leaving. And the only way that you can stop me is to shoot me in the back of the head, because I'm out of here. And they did take it seriously. He was given a bus ticket and sent out. He didn't know what happened with me because we were separated and we weren't allowed to communicate to each other. I was put on an airplane, I think with $150 to my name, put on an airplane and sent back to Seattle. He was put on a bus to his parents in Florida. And all of my phone numbers and notes and personal things were all confiscated before I left. So I didn't have any of the phone numbers because we gave each other contact information in case anything like this would happen, but that was confiscated. So, so I just started like the phone book, Florida, Pesch, anything, I don't know.
Wow.
And so I didn't reach anybody, but his sister, Donna, saw that a 253 phone number had come onto her phone. I didn't speak to her, but because there was no answer, I just hung up. And it says 253, which is a Seattle area code. So she told Matt, and Matt called that number, and my dad picked up the phone. And he said, do you happen to have Amy Scobee there? And Dad says, Amy, Matt's on the phone. After 3 days of me trying to find him. Anyway, he got right on a plane and came up here.
Wow.
Yes. And so within, let's see, we got out on March 1st and he was up here by March 3rd. And then we got married on March 13th, 2005. 2 weeks later. And we've been married ever since. We're going on, this is our 14th year.
Wow, he's a great guy too. And
Oh
by
my
the way,
goodness!
I definitely want to have him on for an interview. And
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. He's
a great guy.
We're just a team like nobody's business. We have so much fun together. We laugh every day.
I'll tell you, he's a great sense of humor, and if I can use this term, he is a no bullshit type person.
That's exactly right.
I think that describes him exactly. But I want to have him on, and I'd love to have him. As a matter of fact.
Oh yeah,
What a story, and a happy ending too.
It's a very happy. I mean, a lot happened since then, and that's what I really want to cover. Everything up to that point is what's covered in my book. My experience in Scientology, starting young, everything there, what I witnessed, how we escaped, and how we got started up is all in the book.
What you told are things that I wouldn't say they're exactly like, but very similar to what other people have said. Yet the church says that everybody is lying, that none of these things happen. This is their excuse.
Of course they're going to say that.
What do we all get together in a stadium someplace and say, okay, here's what I'm going to say. What are you going to say?
Yeah, thousands of people.
Man.
I know.
This is the true story, and here she is. Yeah, and I say to them, have somebody come and face me on a microphone and I'll interview you, and show up for that. Well, I haven't got any takers so far. But anyway, go
on. So after we left, we got started, and first thing we did was go to a box. We were so excited when we left. Like, realize I never drove. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't know how to cook. I had never lived in the real world since age 14, so I didn't know anything. And so I didn't go grocery shopping. So we're at my dad's house and we go grocery shopping, and I realize I can get anything that I want, like root beer floats. So we got root beer floats. And then I hadn't seen any movies, like, even though Forrest Gump had been out for years, we rented Forrest Gump and watched that movie. And it was just, we were like little kids in a candy store. And one of the first things that we did was just look in the newspaper and find a hiring company and go in there. And we took their test, and they're like, why the heck are you guys here? You passed everything 100%. So we just need a job to get started. So we went to work at a box company. Within 3 days, they wanted us to manage the place. But we were just minimum wage, totally happy at what we're doing, making boxes. And then, we started, there was a discount place that was selling furniture. So, because we got a little apartment within a couple weeks. As soon as we could show a paycheck, we got into a little apartment. And even though we didn't have any credit or anything, when we went there, excuse me, the manager of it, her daughter's name was Matt, and her daughter's name was Amy, and her son's name was Matt. So she was like, "Oh, you guys are in." So we went there, and then we needed furniture, so we went to this little discount place, and it was this old man from New York that ran it, which Matt hit off with, because Matt's from New York. They just hit it off with each other, and so we started buying furniture from him, like with the little money that we had, and then we made our apartment a little furniture place where we laid down plastic sheets and we varnish and stuff like that. And I would get up in the middle of the night, put another coat on. He would get up in the morning, put another coat on. And then, so we got a whole bunch of furniture ready. And then we were like, we need to have a garage sale. So at this apartment complex, you can't have a garage sale. So we decided to go around, and I saw a man come out, and I said, I was looking at a house. It would be perfect. It's a really busy corner. And a guy says, "Oh, that nobody lives there. Les Schwab is going to buy it up." And I said, "Oh, where do you live?" And he's like, "Me? Where do I live? I live across the street." "Oh, with that really big garage?" "Yes." I said, "Would you mind if I had a garage sale at your place?" And he's just looking at me like I'm insane. And he says, "Okay." So we brought over all of our stuff, and it was a Memorial Day weekend. $5,000 selling all the things that we had gotten together. And then we started up a little furniture business, and buy and resell, and we did really good at that. It got us going, and then at one point, Scientology wise, what was happening was my mom was being forced to disconnect from me. She was getting a lot of pressure. She was being interrogated on the cans about me. What was I doing? I was also looking on the internet and connecting with people who had also left. I went down to LA and visited people there, and I was being contacted by the Office of Special Affairs saying who I could talk to, who I couldn't talk to. I was being sent a partial freeloader bill, which is when you leave, they charge you for any of the services that you did. I was there for 30 years. Matt was there for 30 years or 27. I was there for 27. He was there for 27 or 30. And the partial bill that came in was $250,000. For somebody who left with $150, that doesn't even buy a decent juicer. They were trying to control us about who we could talk to and who we couldn't talk to. We wrote them a letter saying we are done with Scientology. So do not contact us. Do not try to control us. We're going to talk to who we want to talk to. So then it amped up the pressure on my mom, the pressure on her husband, my mom's husband, to get information about what we were doing and also to disconnect from us. To the point where my mom actually disconnected from me. And even though we're the closest mother and daughter, I mean, we're just always have been. She took me up to the mountains. We sat in the stream because she wanted to talk to me. And she got a bottle of wine out, and then she just started to weep. And I swear I could just break down right now talking about it. But she disconnected from me. And it was the last time that I spoke to her for a while. And she says, the reason why is because she can't lose her husband, her house, her dogs, her livelihood. She was retired. She didn't have anything other than that. And so therefore she had to take the lesser of two evils, and it was just ripped her heart out. It was just, she said, but I can tell you one thing, I will never step foot in another Scientology organization for as long as I live. So that was devastating. And that made me want to fight.
Yeah.
Especially because right at that time, Tommy Davis went on to CNN with his little mug, and he said, "There's no such thing as disconnection in Scientology as you're characterizing it. There's no such thing. We love families." It just made my blood boil. So it's pain. It's pain like you've never felt, and I know that you know that.
Of course I do.
Yes, and so I moved to Clearwater, right on Clearwater Beach, right in the center of where Clearwater is. I did the St. Pete Times article exposing David Miscavige and his abuse. I decided to fight and expose what was going on, because this is a manipulative, controlling, disgusting, human rights abusing organization. And so I did that. I wrote my book. I went to the let's see, I did the articles with St. Pete Times, and I did an interview with CNN and ABC Nightline, and Scientology sent these quote unquote packets against me to these TV shows, and they sent it to me. And one of the things that they gave them was affidavits from all of the senior executives of that were currently on the property, saying that all the beatings that were happening were Mike and Marty, and that they were almost killing each other, but it wasn't David Miscavige. So I took all of those and I said, in their sworn words against penalty of perjury, they are saying that the atmosphere at the int base is almost killing each other, totally panicked, worried that they were going to kill each other. And what else do you need to know, FBI? They're saying it in their own words, that is the atmosphere. Even though they're saying David Miscavige didn't have part of it, all of those executives are saying that was the atmosphere up there. And I said, these are the things that I know. There's beatings, there's tortures, there's holding people against their will. And so they came out, the FBI agent came out and interviewed me for a couple of days. And I gave all the information that I had. I don't know what happened to that investigation. I'm just happy that it's in their files if they ever choose to do something about it. And then I came back to Washington State. I moved back over here, and I released my book. At that time, I was being fair gamed, nonstop with private investigators. And by the way, Ron, while I was in Florida, they had somebody on us named Dwayne Powell, who was pretending to go to the furniture auctions with us and befriend us, and he bought a car from us, and he was like being a friend and trying to get a loan with me. And the guy was just a scumbag. We knew that he was a plant.
Well, he's the one. Him and his son were the two PIs that followed me for over.
I heard that later, and I was telling Tony Ortega, that is the same guy. As soon as I saw the picture, I said, that's the same guy that was with us in Florida.
Yeah.
So they covertly do this. But I also, while he was covertly doing that, I also had overtly private investigators tailing us everywhere we went. And sometimes a couple at a time. It was like a little beehive. And even when I came back to Washington, and they were doing that to my family members too, that have never even been in Scientology,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, when I came back, I reconnected with my mom. I said, you know what? Oh, my aunt called me and said that my mom was so depressed that she was worried. She was worried that she had no reason to live. And I said, you know what? Screw Scientology and all of their rules and anything that they stand for. They are not going to destroy my family like this. So I got a hold of my mom and I said, that's it. Get over here. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to lie. We're going to say that you're not connected with me, but we're going to see each other every single day.
Yeah.
And we did. And eventually I was able to get her husband out of there too. So they officially resigned from Scientology. Her husband officially resigned, and we were all reunited as a family. Finally. And so that was amazing. We still, on my husband's side, have his brother, Scott, in Scientology, which, hopefully there will be, I mean, his mother and his father, they're in their 90s, and getting up there. And what they would like is a family that's reunited, not destroyed because of Scientology. So I'm still praying that happens. So finally, I got my family back together, and that was wonderful. I did a lot of media speaking out against Scientology. There's a quote from Martin Luther King that our lives begin to end the day that we are silent about things that matter. And to me, that like kind of really rung true, because this does matter. There's a lot of people's families that are destroyed because of Scientology. There's a lot of people who are separated because of the fact that their kids are in Scientology. And the mindset is that family doesn't matter because you live, a long time, or over and over and over again. And so therefore, I don't even understand when I try to think about it now. How does that justify it? How does that rationalize it? Because you're an immortal being, you therefore can disregard your family? How does that even do it?
Okay, and let me interject something here. Tommy Davis was right. They do love families, because without families, they would lose their leverage.
Oh, I guess that's one way to love them. It's an evil way to love them. That's
No
not
kidding,
love,
man.
actually. That's not love. It's greed.
Of course it is. But that's how they get leverage on you, by getting your family to disconnect and making you do what.
It's leverage. Oh, yeah. Leverage is exactly what that is, Ron.
Yeah, all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is leverage, because that's one of the reasons why a lot of people wouldn't speak out, is because they were afraid that they would force the disconnection. Because you don't want to lose your family. I mean, your family means everything.
I know. So this is a heck of a story. And what are you doing now, Amy?
So my life is kind of totally took a different turn for the better. Like, all of a sudden, we did really good. We bought a house. We were in electronic sales for several years as independent sales contractors, and we did really good. We were able to buy a house, and we have 3 cars. We have a nice place. And now, when I went to Los Angeles, my mom passed away. Okay, and that was the hardest thing that ever happened. She had cancer, and she passed away. And right before she passed away, I was reading Leah's book, Troublemaker, to her. And I took a picture of me reading Leah's book, and I sent it to Leah. Leah, on her own dime, sent out a shoot crew team to shoot my mom, to get her statement about disconnection. That appeared in the A&E series, Scientology in the Aftermath, episode 1, season 1.
I saw that. Yes. It was wonderful.
And that was my mom. She passed away 2 weeks after doing that interview. So thank God to Leah for sending out the team.
Leah is the best, I got to tell you. She's like the Joan of Arc of our time.
Yes. So she sent out that team, and my mom was able to tell her story. So we were able to get the word out to a lot of people. So I went down to LA, had an opportunity to work on a few, the marketing of a few movies, Christian-based movies, which was Ben-Hur and The Shack. While I was there, the movie The Shack really changed something in me. It made an amazing shift in me with regards to forgiveness, love, trust, faith. And when I came back, I was done with that project, and I came back to be with my family here. I just sent up a prayer saying, open up the doors to whatever my purpose is meant to be. I know I'm almost 55 and it's late in my life, but what is it that I need to be doing? Because I need some help with that direction. And all of a sudden, the doors just started opening. So I had done a celebration of life service for my mom. And I did everything for that. I put together a beautiful tribute video, all the music of her favorite music. I put together her poems that she had written as postcards for the guests. I wrote about her journey and attributes and qualities that made her so unique. And I did that service to a lot of people. And so many people were saying, oh my goodness, you should do this for a living. So I I created a company called Graceful Farewell. And the second I started promoting that, everything just kind of fell right into place. And I was hired by the largest company that does funeral homes and cemeteries in Canada and the United States. And I was hired as what's called a celebrant, and that is a life tribute specialist. I did the training for it. I was officially certified, and I've done over 100 graveside funeral services, memorial services for people. Wow. And I'm a trained celebrant, and I do the whole Seattle market. So I'm busy. I'm all over the place. And what I do is I meet with people. I find out all about their loved one. I write about their journey, everything about them, put it together in a wonderful service for them, and then I conduct the service. And it's different for everyone. Sometimes it's beautiful candle lightings, scripture. Sometimes it's playing bad to the bone while people are drive the Harleys up the center of the aisle. You know, it's just all tailored to that person and all their likes and everything. To number one, acknowledge their wonderful life, and number two, create healing for the people left behind. And it's a very rewarding profession, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I really thoroughly enjoy it. I feel like it's a divine assignment, honestly, and I really love it.
Amy, this has been a tremendous story. I got to tell you,
I could talk for 100 years, that's for sure. I mean, I've got lots of interesting stories and everything, but so does everybody. You know, that's the thing that I've learned in doing this is every single person is here for a reason. Every single person is wonderful in their own way. I think that Scientology is a counterfeit religion. It's destructive to individuals and families, and that needs to be exposed. And I think that David Miscavige, I mean, he's obviously watching this video. He chose the evil side. He chose to be evil and destructive. And all I can say, you know, is, you know, turning people into shells of themselves and beating people and treating them as if they were animals and stuff is the wrong path. And, you know, his heart is going to be judged. The color of his heart is going to be judged at one point. And so he can either make a change or not and suffer the consequences. That's how I feel about it.
And I'm going to tell you, Amy, I don't think I'm going to add another word to that. This has been an adventure, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me this platform. And I, you know, it's always fun to talk to people who have also experienced the same thing and understand what we've gone through. Your program is called Life After Scientology. There is life after Scientology, and there's so many people that have prayed for me. When I was working on the movies like The Shack, there were pastors and everything like that suddenly saw me and said, "Oh my goodness, we saw the show. Our whole congregation prayed for you." I mean, I felt so touched. That's actual love and care.
Yeah.
You know, so I just feel blessed to be doing what I'm doing right now. I feel healed from the effects of Scientology, even though you struck a chord on the forgiveness part of it. I'll have to take a look at that. But I just want people to know there is life after Scientology, and that it's a good life. It's a good life, and just connect with your family, you know, and stay true to your own values.
Amy Scobee, thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Mwah.
I have a very special guest, and his name is Matt Pesch, and he is the husband of Amy, who I had on in a prior interview. Matt has one hell of a story to tell, I got to tell you, and without getting into a whole bunch of talk over nothing, let's get right into it. So, Matt, good morning, and I welcome you to the show, buddy.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Now, as with my other interviews that I do, what I'd like to do is just get started like from the beginning and just tell us, how did you get in Scientology? How did you get involved?
Well, I was 20 years old and I was living on Long Island. I had my own apartment and I was kind of just kicking around doing different manual jobs and things like that and hitchhiking around the United States, up and down the coast, up to Canada. And, just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And a friend of mine told me about this thing called Scientology, which I'd never heard of before. And it turned out there was this little house down the street that was Scientology. It was a little, what they call a mission, which is a little starter place. It has like 4 staff members and maybe 10 public that go to it, right? So I go down there and I sign up for the communications course, kind of just something to do in the evening. I'm just kind of playing around, And on the break, I'd go next door to the bar and get a beer, come back to the course room. It was just something to do. And
by the way, on that,
yeah,
you didn't tell the course supervisor you had a beer when you came back, did you?
Yeah, they found out about it. I got kicked off the course for 2 weeks, and I came back. And funny enough, the night that I came back, they had some girls stopping by to show a slideshow of what was happening in Los Angeles, and it was showing guys doing fix-ups of the building, renovations of the hospital complex that they had purchased there. And it was all sunny and palm trees. And, I'm in New York and it's like 2 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And, they said, yeah, you can go there and learn how to do renovations, construction, which I was interested in. Probably a lot more than Scientology at the time. Right. And you could also get all these expensive courses and all this kind of stuff that was supposed to make you like superhuman kind of stuff, all the promotion on that.
Yeah.
And you would get that for free if you worked there. And I thought, what the heck, I'll check that out. So I wasn't even a Scientologist, really. You couldn't consider me a Scientologist. I knew really very little about Scientology. So I went and saw the girl and I said, hey, I want to go do that. She thought I was like kidding her. And she said, well, what would you have to do it? And I said, well, I just bought a car yesterday. I have to return that. And I have to bring the keys back to my job. And I have to clean out my apartment. And I have to say goodbye to some people. I said, I can leave tomorrow. And then she really thought I was kidding her.
Yeah.
And she said, I'll tell you what, you come back with a plane ticket and then, I'll know you're serious. So I came back with the plane ticket and I left the next day and I arrive in Los Angeles. I'm going to, supposed to be joining this group. That's all these super duper dudes. And I get to the airport and of course there's nobody there to pick me up. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And then finally this guy shows up and he looks like they just drug him out of bed and he's missing buttons on his coat and he's kind of holding the cross. And we go to his car and he's got the door tied off with a piece of rope. And I'm like, what the heck, right?
Christ. Yeah.
When we get to the complex and they had just purchased it, a year earlier, a few months earlier. So it's all surrounded by a big fence and it's got 3 strands of barbed wire across the top. And at the gate, there's this rent-a-cop there with the big German Shepherd. And I'm like, holy shit, this place looks like an insane asylum. So we go inside and they tell me I got to go up to some room on the 6th floor and the elevator doesn't work. So I, walk up there, I walk in this room and I'm like, holy shit, should I leave now or should I wait for the morning? I think I just hitchhiked the West Coast for a while and, get on to the next adventure. So I thought, I'll get a little bit of sleep and I'll leave in the morning. So as soon as the sun starts coming up, I go down the fire escape on the opposite side of the building from where the security guy is with his dog. I throw my bag over the fence. I jump the fence. And I head down to a local restaurant to get breakfast before I take off. I run into a Sea Org member in there with a uniform on and stuff, and I kind of start talking with him, and he said, oh, no, come on back. I'll show you, the guys are all working there and blah, blah, blah. So I said, all right, let's go back, show me. So we walk in there, and there's a couple of guys that were spray painting, taking a break, and they're rolling cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I never seen guys roll cigarettes. People buy cigarettes.
Right.
I mean, in an institution, I've seen somebody doing that. But so I'm like, wow, you guys smoke pot here. I said, they gave me trouble about that back in New York, The guy's like, no, we're not smoking pot. I mean, that's how green I was, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing work with them, and I hear the guys talking behind me that are running the thing, that how they're going to get the floors all stripped and waxed there. And they're doing the ASHO, the Advanced St. Hill Organization building, trying to get that ready for the people to move into, right?
Right.
So I turn around and say, hey, I know how to do all that stuff. I can do that for you. And they said, well, what would you need? And I told them. So they set me up. I finished all those floors, just moving the last stuff into the building. And in those days, it was such a rush to get things done. New guys, we didn't do any study. Like usually new recruits, they get 5 hours a day to do the basic courses to kind of get introduced to everything. And there wasn't a study. So we finished that job, and they said, well, we're going to send you on a mission. We want to send you on a mission. I'm like, was it like Mission Impossible? I thought maybe they're having trouble with somebody or something. I don't know, Yeah. So they said, go to such and such a room in the building. So I go there, and I walk in. They realize I don't know nothing, And they put me one-on-one with a little supervisor to kind of get some basic courses on, that I'm going to need to be able to do this mission. They take me to this office, this big office, and they show me a desk with a typewriter and a phone. And I'm like, man, you got me confused with somebody. If you took all the time I've ever been on a telephone in my life, it's probably less than an hour. I've never typed. I don't, what's the deal here, And they said, no mistake, You're going to be in charge of purchasing all the different things we need for our next building. I'm going to call up on the phone, get the best quotes. Then I got to type up a whole submission on why those materials, why that quantity, all this kind of stuff. Which I was like the 7th on this project. It's called a mission, right? Yeah. So I'm number 7 on the totem pole there. So, it was good for me because I was actually learning all this stuff. I'd call up about, I want to buy 5 doors this size, and the guy would say, is that a right-hand door or a left-hand door? I'm like, what? So I have to learn about it. And I'd, call about wire. Is that stranded, solid? All the hardware, all the plumbing. I was learning all this different stuff. But the crazy part was we were only allowed 3 hours sleep a day.
Yeah.
And the way it worked in my office was we had a pillow on the floor, and you took turns 1 hour at a time per the clock on that pillow. And, the girl that was in charge, she was like about 30 years old. She would fall asleep with her face on the typewriter, and the phone would ring, wanting to talk to her. We'd have to get underneath her arms and start walking her body around the office till her feet started working. And she'd have all the typewriter keys imprinted on her face. It was bad. So what was happening? Go ahead.
Matt, I got to say something.
Yeah.
People watching this are thinking, is he making it up? But I'm going to tell you something. It's almost standard what you're saying. And right. I'm smiling because what you're saying to me seems unbelievable to a person who's never experienced working with this group. And in those days, this is fascinating because it's just bringing back humorous memories, but a lot of them aren't that humorous when you're going through it. Anyway, right. I just wanted to interject that. So continue on, buddy.
All right. So, of course, one person after the next in the office, they're going to go to the bathroom and you never see them again. And pretty soon I'm left, I'm in charge.
Jesus Christ. Oh.
And I'm thinking, man, this place is crazy because the same thing with the guys doing the work on the building, they're not getting sleep. I walk over there and this guy's sleeping in the bathroom, sleeping literally in the closet. You open the closet door, there's somebody sitting in there sleeping. And I'm thinking, they're wasting people. I mean, this isn't a sprint. This Scientology thing, it's got to be more of a long distance race. I couldn't understand why they were just so willing to burn people out like that. But I'm like, all right, I'm learning. I'm kind of still curious. I'm still wondering if the Scientology part, the ordering part and all that stuff, the counseling is any good. And I'm just, kind of sticking it out. So I finished that project. Everything works out good. We get the building done in time, which, by the way, they're doing it in this kind of speed because they think by having these buildings completed, they're going to do some kind of crazy expansion. But we moved the people into that building, the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles, and it was tight quarters when we moved them in. That's 40 years ago, and they've never needed a bigger building.
Right.
Just to show the lack of expansion. The same thing with the first place, the Asho place. They were making, there was 2 parts to it at that point. They were making about $150,000 to $200,000 a week back then. And that's when minimum wage was $2 an hour. Well, right. Minimum wage now in Los Angeles is $15 an hour. And they're still making about the same amount of money, $150,000 to $200,000 a week.
Yep.
So the idea that they're that it worked, that they actually expanded there is not true. So, but to go on, so they tell me, okay, we want you now we're going to form an organization called the Pack Estates Renovations Org. And we're going to.
Wait, I missed that.
Yeah. After I finished doing that mission, now they want to post me on a post, right? They want to give me an actual post title.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be basically doing the same function. It's going to be the Treasury Secretary of this new renovations organization they're forming up.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, you know what? I said, I'll do that, but under one circumstance, I get every Saturday off. I said, because I got to go, I'm going to make money outside here. They were paying guys $2 a week. I mean, literally, they opened the envelope and there's $2 in there. And I said, I'm not even going to stand in line for $2. You guys got to be kidding me, So,
of course, yeah.
So I never did stand in line for it. This is bullshit, right? So I said, I need 1 day off. I don't care about statistics. I don't care about, what the deal is. I get every Saturday off. So they agreed to it, believe it or not, back then. Wow. And I got a job selling snow cones on Venice Beach on Saturdays. I sell them for 50 cents, get 10 cents a commission on each snow cone. I was doing like 700 to 1,000 a day.
Wow.
And so things were going good for about 3 months. Everything's going good. I have my job. I'm making money, doing my, my post there. And then one day I get asked if I want to go work with L. Ron Hubbard. And I'm like, L. Ron Hubbard? I mean, why would you want me to go work with L. Ron Hubbard? I said, does he need somebody to rake his leaves? That's actually what I said. Do you need somebody to rake his leaves? I'm not even really a Scientologist. I had no intention of staying there more than, a few months or a year. I never thought I'd be there for 27 years.
Wow.
It would never even cross my mind. But I said, all right, you want me to go work with L. Ron Hubbard? I'll go do it. What the heck, So they said, all right, be on such and such a corner on such and such time in Los Angeles, and somebody will pick you up. So that happened, get picked up by a vehicle, and it's like 007, they're switching vehicles. They're checking all this electronic shit, whatever. And we wind up at Palm Springs. So I worked there for a few weeks renovating L. Ron Hubbard's home, and which was pretty like a middle-class type of home. It wasn't anything fancy at all.
Yeah.
And then they said, okay, go ahead.
Did you actually meet him when you were there?
No, I'd never met him.
Okay.
Never, ever met him. One thing that I would say, though, the next crazy thing I run into there is that his space, his office, has to be like dust particle free. You understand? Right. It's not like just clean. It's got to be no dust, because this guy's supposed to be so superhuman that he can't tolerate a dust particle. He could smell a plate that's been washed and tell you what was eaten on it. A mouse farts in the back closet of the house and he can tell you what the mouse ate or something. It was crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And being another person is supposed to white glove this little office. It took us 48 hours straight. I mean, every rag had to be specially cleaned in a special wash machine by, somebody who would special smell check it. And it comes in a plastic bag, and you got to wipe the thing real slow and just get that dust out, and it goes back into a plastic bag. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy stuff. But I thought, I don't know, maybe the guy is superhuman or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of going along with the flow to kind of, see what's going to happen, right?
Right.
So anyway, they say, okay, now you guys are going to go to this new property we bought, which is the International Base in Hemet, California. It's where they have the international management these days. It's where they have Golden Era Studios. And we had just taken over the property, and there was maybe 15 of us got sent there, all young guys that, had never really done any construction renovations before. So we start fixing up the buildings. We even build a studio there, a soundstage studio from ground up without being able to hire anybody from the outside. And it was a great adventure. I mean, we were learning and we were proud of ourselves, and it was going good. Then I get asked to be the security. They're going to form a security unit there on the base, and they want me to be in charge of the security and this kind of thing. And it was David Miscavige was the one that pulled me into the office and told me that he wanted me to pick some guys, and we're going to make the security outfit and all that. Well, what did I think about it? And it was funny. I said, I think I'm going to feel pretty weird dressed up like a rent-a-cop, And he just laughed. He thought that was funny. And but we formed with security. Security back then is nothing like it developed into. We didn't have the fences. We didn't have the barbed wire and the razor wire and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, boy, Matt, in those days there wasn't even a fence around the property.
There wasn't even a fence. We had no concept of keeping staff in. If somebody wanted to leave, they were gone within 2 or 3 days. They would just get a quick little check and be allowed to leave.
Yep. Oh yeah, and people could wander onto the property. I just want to tell this little
yeah, go ahead.
In the mess hall, or the place where we used to eat. It was
Right.
called MCI, short for Massacre Canyon Inn.
Right.
And in there was a composer and arranger by the name of Barry Stein.
Right.
He had his piano next to the bar, the old bar that was in there when it was active as a resort.
Right.
And one day a guy comes in, sits at the bar, and says to him, "Let me have a Bud Light." That's a true story. The guy thought
Right.
the thing was still open. He wanted to get a beer to have it down there. But no fence, no anything. Not at all like it is now, which right now, anyway, go on, continue.
Yeah. I mean, back then, if a person just took off, it's called it's called blowing in Scientology terms, where you don't ask permission to leave, you just like disappear in the night.
Yeah.
We never even had the concept of chasing the person down like they do these days and hiring private investigators to follow the guy and sending out teams of staff to find them. Later, the security chief, you've done interviews with him. He said he hunted down and brought back hundreds of people, right, to that base.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of people. And there was no declaring people suppressive person or something like that, like they do these days, where you can't talk to your family and you're kind of like cut off from anybody you've ever known in Scientology. We would just write a thing and put it in the person's folder saying the guy took off, and so if he ever wants to come back, he has to do some amends to the group or something like that. It was real simple.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was most of what we did was protection of the property from fire. That was like 90% of that job.
I got it.
And so after security, I went back on to running the construction and renovation stuff again. And now it started getting pretty interesting on that base because they brought in, there's a thing called the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force. And it's kind of like for those people who have a bad attitude or they don't produce the way they're supposed to, they get kind of sent to, it's like almost like a North Korean concentration camp kind of setup.
Right.
They got to run everywhere. They got to call everybody sir. They have no contact with their spouse and children. They do hard labor. Back then, you can usually get off in a couple of years, whatever. Later on, it became way, way worse. But anyway, they brought in these people from all these different RPF units from different bases, Scientology bases, like Los Angeles, Clearwater, England, these kind of things. They brought them all to the international base, and they were supposed to get all these different projects done so that L. Ron Hubbard could return and work at that base, right?
Yep.
The problem is these guys, they weren't being given any kind of time to do the program that would allow them to be released. And they left behind their wives, their children, and they were like, they were running like slaves, really. Sometimes they'd work 2, 3, one time 4 days with no sleep. We're in the desert. We're working construction around the clock.
Right.
I mean, it was nasty. So these guys are coming to me. I'm working the same schedule as them, but I'm not in the RPF. I'm the person outside the RPF that's responsible for running the projects. And they're saying, what's the deal? How do I get out of this place? When are we going to go on study time? And I'd say, what I was being told, you get the next job done, then we're going to go back on to getting study. And of course, we'd finish the next project, then they'd be told, no, now it's going to be the next project, and then it's going to be the next project. And this is going on for a while. So it was bad. I mean, I was literally, I'm 6'4". I was down to 163 pounds.
Jesus Christ.
I was bones, man. I was bones. I was exhausted.
That's thin.
And, yeah, that's bad. And I got called into we put them back on. They started study finally for the first day, right? And I got called into an office and told I got to tell these guys that we're going to play a game. And I'm like, what's the game, right?
Yeah.
The game is, if they could get like 2 years of construction projects done over the next 8 weeks, basically they could keep that on schedule. They could stay on study. And it's impossible. I'm like, that's no game. I'm not announcing that. And I put my foot down, and it became a bit, of a scene. So now I'm considered disaffected because I'm not going with the flow. I'm refusing to run the slave labor camp anymore.
Right.
So then I said, okay, good. So now you're assigned to the slave labor camp.
So you were putting the RPF at that point.
Say that again?
So you were putting the RPF at that point, right?
Yeah. And for me, you know what it was? I was already in the Sea Org for 5 years, and I had done no Scientology, right? I mean, I had learned construction. I was great, and I was happy for that. But I was still curious, is the Scientology stuff, does it work, right? I don't know. I've not experienced any of it.
Yeah.
So by getting assigned to the RPF, two things is going to happen. One, I'm going to leave the base. They're going to send me to Clearwater. And second is now I'm going to finally have a chance maybe to experience Scientology, because when you're on RPF, you're supposed to get 5 hours a day, you know, ordering, counseling each other back and forth, right? So I'm like, cool. This is a good thing for me. I'm like happy to get the heck out of there. So I go to Clearwater and I do that for a few weeks, working on a crystal ballroom. And then they actually fly me back to International Base to do my old job from the position of being in the RPF. And I'm like, oh, but after a few days, you know, it was saying, hey, this guy's disaffected. He's not supposed to be here. So then I get sent to Los Angeles to do the RPF, which I did. I didn't get paid the whole entire time I was there, not a penny.
Really?
Yeah. And I was there for the next year and a half, and I completed the RPF. And then I got sent to Clearwater to run the construction there, which I did. And working on Fort Harrison Hotel, fixing all that place up. And then they wanted me to be in charge of what's called Flag Crew, which is the organization there that takes care of all the buildings, the food for the public, food for the crew, transport, all that stuff. I have about 200 staff members under me. I get posted as that. But the organization is $1 million insolvent. It's got $1 million worth of outstanding bills. Wow. And it was bad. There was like, you know, there was the guys that were bringing the food, Cisco, they were going to close, you know, not give any more food. One of the buildings that we were renting, they were going to lock the front doors. I mean, the telephones were going to be shut off. I mean, it was bad.
Okay, and, Matt, about what year was that? What year
that was 1988.
Okay.
Now I've been in for 10 years. And, but anyway, I ran the place for a few months and I got the bills down to zero. And basically what it is the organization is completely fixated on bringing money in, but it's kind of dumb on how it spends its money a lot of times.
Right.
And really what I did was I fixed up how the money was being spent. It didn't really change much of what was coming in, just what was going, how it was being spent, and all those different waste and different things like that. And it only took a few months. I had all the bills paid off.
Now, let me tell you something.
Yeah.
If you did this in the real world, not inside the bubble, at that point, you would have probably been making at least $250,000 a year. At least, I would say, to pull somebody back from the edge of going out of business to where they're solvent again. That's not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And how much were you getting paid at that point?
About $18 a week.
And that was when you got paid, right?
When we got paid, yeah.
Okay, all right, continue.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a long story, and I can tell you how I did it. It was actually pretty brilliant, I will say. And the truth is, at the end of it, you know what happened? I got removed from that post.
Jesus Christ.
Because
why am I surprised? I don't know. Why am I surprised? That's normal, isn't it? When you
it's normal. Because this crazy woman, that was up in management, she wanted, you know, L. Ron Hubbard said that the place should be 5-star. Now, that hotel, to make it 5-star, it's ridiculous. The rooms are so tiny. The bathroom is so tiny. I mean, you literally almost have to hold on to the sink to sit on the toilet. You know, it's like, it's not what a 5-star hotel is, even to start with the floor plan of the place, right?
Yeah.
And my viewpoint was get the money handled, and then let's go from 1 star to 2 stars. Let's go from 2 stars to 3 stars. You know, let's just take it on and grade it and bring this thing along.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I got removed. She came down from international management and proceeded to put the place insolvent by about $150,000 the first week. She just went out and purchased all these little goodies and robes and shampoo bottles and shit, and with no money approved, with no money set aside, and put the place insolvent again.
Was that Jenny?
Yep, Jenny Lindstein.
So now she comes down and buys all these goodies and throw you back into insolvency again.
Yeah, so I'm like, all right, whatever. I go back to run the renovations. We go down to Sandcastle. We're doing that routine down there. And pretty soon they want me to go to the organization, which is called the Flag Service Organization, which delivers all the Scientology services. They're in Clearwater. They make about $2 million a week. They bring in more money in Clearwater than all the rest of Scientology combined.
Right.
But at the time, they weren't making very good money. You know, the money was down, and they thought if they moved me over there to kind of run all the people that make the money and kind of beat them up a little bit or whatever, not physically, but kind of like use push these guys, they could make more money.
Right.
So, so I go do that for about a year. I hated it. It was crazy. It was criminal. It was like used car lot stuff where all the information about these public that show up, they've already got all their finance information, all their personal information. They assign the person that goes after the money from these people, based on the buyer type, which is already understood before they show up. They have to go through this whole routing form where they're put through seeing all these different type of money-making people from different units. Scientology kind of shifted from just selling Scientology to getting people just to donate straight money where no service was needed to give back to them. They would be given money to translate the materials. They'd be given money to donate books to libraries, to Way to Happiness, these little booklets, to give these out to people on the streets. There was all these different things that a public person would be asked to give money to, of which there was no accounting for that money, how it would be used. They would never be able to find out if it was really used that way, how was it used, whatever. And there's no delivery needed to be going back to that person.
Right. In other words, it was something for nothing.
Something for nothing. Yeah. And there was a reason for that, because the prepayments, just that flag alone, like people would prepay for courses and counseling, and it would go onto an account for them. And there was $400 million on account, unused, which people at that time could ask for back. Do you understand? They could say, you know what, I'm done with Scientology. Give me back my $100,000.
Wait, you said 400 million?
400 million just in Clearwater.
Jesus Christ.
So, I mean, it's quite a liability to be carrying as an organization.
No, I did not know that. And I know a lot about the insides of Scientology. That is brand new news to me right at this moment. I got to tell you, Matt. Anyway,
and it was getting worse every week, because we would be delivering about 1.4, 1.5 million, but we were taking in 2 million. Some weeks we took in 5 million. Some weeks we took in 7 million. I mean, it was growing fast, this liability. So the whole concept was, I'm sure from management was, hey, we can't survive selling Scientology. They were insolvent like crazy. So they had to switch off to trying to get money for nothing. And Scientology took a big turn. And to this day, I mean, you'll see the magazines, it's all about, hyping up all these people that give the millions of dollars for nothing.
Yep.
And it's very little attention on the people that are paying for actual service.
That I know to be true. I've seen some of these magazines, and it's all to the IAS or some building fund, or maybe a new building they're going to buy. God knows.
Yeah, that whole, ideal org kind of thing. It's just another part of that whole scam, which is to get the local people to pay for a big, beautiful building, which they don't need because they already have like nobody in them. Yeah. But they get these people to pay for it. The local organization does not own that building. That building is owned by International Management, and that local church rents that building from International Management.
Even though their contributions built it.
Yep. So they never get to own it. They just get to rent it, even though it's their contributions from that little local church community that paid for that building. And, the big statistic up at International Management is called assets and reserves, which is, this whole real estate thing is reserves and assets. It's growing their statistic. It makes them look like they're really doing great because financially they are doing great. They're growing this whole real estate thing, but it has nothing to do with Scientology. It has nothing to do with helping anybody.
Wow. I'll tell you, I don't know who made up. I think it was maybe Mark Headley who said this one time, and I like the description. He said, Scientology is a cult disguised as a religion operating as a business.
That's completely correct.
Go on.
That's completely correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, so after being in charge of making the money for you, which I hated, I got switched over to be in charge of treasury, which is all the spending part. Nothing could be spent by the organization without me approving every single little penny of it, right?
Right.
That's the money that gets given back to us. I should explain something else. When a church, even the one in Clearwater, none of the money that comes in from the public actually comes into a bank account that we control. It all goes into bank accounts, and this is for Scientology International. Any church, quote unquote church, that brings in money from its public parishioners, that money goes into a bank account that's controlled by international management. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, international management can decide if it wants to give any of that money back to that local church to allow it to continue to operate. And they can decide how much. It could be zero, or it could be, a percentage of it. In Clearwater, if we brought in $2 million, we got back $350,000. And that was to put back into making more money to pay for the different operating costs and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So wait a minute. You'd pull in $2 million, you got 350,000 out of it.
The rest went to international management.
Okay.
So, that's just a concept. So then we have to say, okay, we got 350,000. This is how we want to spend it. If you give us that money, they haven't given it to me yet, but they're saying that's what we're going to give it to you. But show me a financial plan. What are you going to spend it on? And show me how that money is going to make more money. So you have to put this whole big plan together, give it to International Finance, the representative that's there in Clearwater. It gets approved, and then you get the money, and then you have to disperse it and account for it exactly the way it's supposed to be spent.
Right.
All right. I'd always make sure that I had like emergency money kind of set aside, because emergencies would come up, such as somebody would go completely nuts, right? And which can happen with all the pressure and no sleep and these kind of things. And also it happen with public quite a bit because they're getting this counseling that kind of makes them kind of go cuckoo sometimes.
Yeah.
And you have to have money immediately to get these guys sent off someplace, right? A lot of times these people would be escorted and dropped off at a Scientology relative, or if they had no Scientology relatives, they'd be dropped off on the doorstep of some relative and give them the problem of this person who, is one cuckoo. The other thing that would happen is sometimes you'd have people who do criminal acts, which included child, these kind of things. The church would never turn these people in.
Right.
What they would do is they want them shipped off as fast as possible to someplace else where they were out of state, and it wouldn't come back on them. I mean, Karen Delacare, when she was writing up after her son died, she was writing up something on the computer, and she mentioned she didn't understand why her 13-year-old son had been moved from Clearwater to Los Angeles. And it was kind of like a mystery to her. And I read that and I was like, I know why your son was moved from Clearwater to Los Angeles. He was raped by an adult, and they needed him out of there immediately. Why do I know that? Because any of that money that moves, I got to see how it moved, why it's moving. Why do you need plane tickets within an hour for somebody? Why was there no prediction on this, right? So I let her know what the deal was on that. And, it was nasty stuff. The church is nasty, man.
I'll tell you, these are horror stories. I'll tell you, the worst thing about this is you're telling the truth. Continue on.
All right. So basically, I reached a point. Oh, yeah. As a Treasury Secretary, my main job per policy is to make sure there's no free service being given away, right?
Yeah.
So it turns out that the family of Tom Cruise is down there, and they're getting over $100,000 worth of free auditing, which is completely off policy. And, the people that are delivering, they don't want to deliver it. They can't count on a statistic, the delivery they're doing, because there's no invoice for it. But everybody's kind of afraid to kind of go against the flow. And this thing is supposed to be coming down, this order from someplace up high or whatever. I could be sent to the Rehabilitation Project Force for the next 10 years for allowing this thing to go down if I don't handle it, or at least report it as a Treasury Secretary.
Right.
So I write, like you're supposed to be able to write a report. If all else fails, you can always write to David Miscavige's little group of guys, which is called Religious Technology Center, or RTC, right?
Right.
So they have like little wood boxes that have locks on them that you can slip your report into that nobody can prevent a report from going up to David Miscavige's guys. So I put a report in there, not knowing this is David Miscavige's little buddy, that he's the one that's pushing the free service for this guy. So, of course, that wasn't a great move for me. So now I'm public enemy number one, and I get told I could either go to the RPF or I could go work in the furniture mill that's like about a mile down the street from the main place in Clearwater. And I'm going to be the sawdust cleaner or something like that for the rest of my CO career, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing the RPF, but I'll go work in the furniture mill. Another thing I can learn, I'll learn the furniture.
Yeah.
So I go there and I worked there for a couple of years, but then I want to leave the CO. I've had enough. I've done pretty much every course, every type of counseling, every type of training you can do. I'm OT7.
Wait
the hope that
did you get up to OT7?
Yeah.
Staff member?
Yeah.
Well,
you know how I did that? Which is incredible. I'll tell you real quickly, because for somebody who does construction type work, to ever go up the bridge is like impossible. Nobody does that, right?
I know that. That's why I'm astonished.
Because the church will only invest that kind of counseling to people that they could use to make more money selling counseling and delivering counseling, right?
Right.
The way I did it was I would go to somebody who was the case supervisor that would oversee the counseling, and I'd say, hey, what would you need to be able to supervise my folders? And the lady would say, well, she's in some little office, and she said, I need more lighting. I got folders all over the floor. If I could have shelving, if you could paint the place, if you could put a new hardware on my door for security. And I said, consider it done. I'll do all that for you. You're my supervisor, right? Then I go to an auditor. I'd say, hey, somebody comes for class 9 training, the higher level counseling training that I would need to do OT levels and stuff. I say, what would you need in order to audit me on some of the stuff I need? He said, I really hate living in this friggin' student dorm with 15 smelly guys. If I could get my own room, I'm your man. I'm saying, I'd set it up. I can give him his own room.
Yeah.
And then, another auditor, I said, what do you need? He said, I got almost no air conditioning in my stupid room. It's so hot. I got a little fan, blah, blah. I said, no problem. I went up in the ceiling. I got some flex duct. I tied into the main AC ducting. I ran that thing in and put a louver in the ceiling. I mean, you could freeze meat in that place if you wanted. Oh, so I just wheeled and dealed the whole thing to make myself get all the stuff that I need to get, because nobody's going to give you shit in that place. I don't care how hard you work. They're not going to give it to you unless it benefits them, unless it benefits the church making money. You're not going to get it.
Oh, I'll tell you, that was very clever of you. Well, wait a minute. That's the way life is. You give something and you get something in exchange for it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
If the whole Sea Org operated that way, it may be a different scene. If he had to give something of value for something he's getting of value. That's how life operates. And great story, man. I got to tell you.
Anyway, I'm
the only person ever to go to OT7 in the Sea Org. You know that?
Yeah, I know.
As a matter of fact, you probably are.
Yeah, I know. I probably am.
I should pay you for doing this interview.
I wheeled and deal all kinds of shit, man. I could tell you, I even had a 30-foot yacht that I had out in the Clearwater Marina, because a public came down and he had this big, beautiful boat, sleep 4, bathroom, bar, red carpet, black leather furniture, stereo system, all this stuff, right? And he took it down from like Virginia, and he needed somebody to watch it when he wasn't there. And I said, no, I'll watch your boat. In this marina, you had to have a key to get into the place because people lived off their boats there. You had showers and bathrooms and laundry.
Yeah.
I went down there. We had poker games there, parties. I fished off that thing 100 times. It was anyway. Here I was, trying to route out of the Sea Org, right?
Yeah.
They make it impossible. They say, okay, once you say you want to leave, they've put you into what's called pig's berthing. Pig's berthing is some room that the pipe broke. It got washed out. It's got mold in it. It's no carpet. It's just nasty ass. The window's missing. There's no air conditioning. You're in Florida. You get moved into pig's berthing.
Right.
Nobody will talk to you. You're segregated. your food you get is whatever is left over from the crew, maybe if somebody has the time to bring it out to where you are. And the bad part of it was, when you're a higher level of counseling that you need, you're not going to get it, because there's an order that no high level counselor can audit staff. So you're sitting there and you have two things you can do. You can either escape, fight your way out of there, whatever, and become what's called a suppressive person, which means you're cut off from all your family and any Scientology you've ever known. Or you can go back to work.
Yeah.
So after a couple of weeks, all right, good, I'll go back to back to work, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, I had was assigned to the RPF for something which didn't really matter, but I was agreeable to go do it with the idea that, hey, I could route out of the Sea Org from the RPF, because they have their own auditors, their own counselors internally.
Right.
And they have their own system of being able to get out of there. So I agreed to go into the rehabilitation project force, and I'm amazed at this place. I'm there for 3 days, and I get told I'm in charge of the 70 people that are in there. I'm like, man, I'm like, in my mind, I'm only here to get out, not to run this place, right? But okay, I look at all the people who are in there, how long they've been in there for, and I see this average of 7 years these people have been in there. I mean, there's people that have been in there for 12 years, and they might have their wife and kids living 200 yards away in a building that they haven't seen in all that time. They have not seen them, right? I mean, you're talking, they're crying. These people are crying. They're literally losing their minds. I'm not saying a little bit. I mean, completely losing their minds. They got room there that has so much padding and soundproofing, because some of these people scream and make such a fuss when they go in for their auditing that they have to put them in that room to get the counseling. I mean, it's bad. It's inhumane. I mean, a person that goes to prison for murder still has the ability a lot of times to have contact with a loved one, or they can use the telephone. These guys can't use a telephone.
Right.
They can't do that. They're under guard 24/7. When they go to sleep at night, there's a guard on that building. They're inside a compound. There's roving security. If you touch the fence, it sets off lights and alarms. If you get over the fence and run, they're going to hunt you down. They will go out of state. They will go out of country to hunt you down. I mean, it's not a joke,
Yeah, I know that.
And so anyway, I'm trying to route out, and I eventually, even in the RPF, I say, yeah, me and Amy, we decided we're going to leave. There's no way she's ever going to get to the program, because, she's reporting that David Miscavige is beating people and stuff like that. They're not going to let her outside the RPF to go tell somebody that.
No way.
No way.
She would be a high security risk, right?
She's a high security risk, right? They have no intention. They've actually even got already a SP declare written on her while she's doing the RPF that they're going to spring on her at some point.
Yeah.
She wasn't supposed to know that, but there was, because there's no way they're going to let her talk to another Scientologist. Okay, good. So we decided we're going to get the heck out of there. So we say, we want to route out, blah, blah. You get separated. You're eating rice and beans 3 times a day. It's going on for about 6 weeks. I'm renovating apartments for different executives there and stuff like that as what I'm doing during the day. And I'm waiting to get this counseling I need to leave. And the counseling it's like the question, have you ever done anything wrong? They're never gonna let me out of there. I can see it. They're not gonna let me out of there. They're just playing games and wasting time. So then I was like, that's, this is it, right? It's getting videoed. The video's going to David Miscavige's staff. They're overseeing this thing because it's such a touchy subject. They don't want us, me and Amy, to leave.
Right.
So I threw the cans down. I looked into the camera and I said, that's it. I said, if me and Amy ain't out of here by 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, I said, we're walking out. And I said, you don't have a security guard that can stop me. You don't have a gate, anything. If you want to stop me, you're going to have to shoot me in the effing head, because we're out of here. And then that was it. I got up and left. And I knew I wasn't kidding. And we were out of there the next day. They tried to keep us separated. They sent her to Seattle. They sent me to my parents' place in Florida. but we were able to connect up again, and I flew to Seattle, and we settled in there and stuff like that. Got married within a couple of weeks, and we've done really great since then. We made lots of money. We bought a house. Everything's going great. But I will say this: the church still tried to control us when we left, and I'd be at work and get a phone call. Oh, you can't. This is the church. You can't talk to this person. You can't do this, do that. I'm like, say what? I mean, they use the suppressive person declare as blackmail to control people, because they can say, if you don't do this and this, we're going to declare you and you won't be able to talk to your family. Well, they already declared me. The blackmail was gone. There was nothing left to blackmail me with. So I just, I wrote them a letter and I just said, stay away from me. I want nothing to do with you guys, right?
Yeah.
Then we started going around and talking to different people who had left that we had known, veteran people in Portland and Seattle and in California and Texas and Florida and Virginia. We were just going around just to meet up with old friends. And they all had the same story. They had all left due to situations with David Miscavige and the abuses that they endured from him and witnessed under him. There's all these stories about the hole where these people were kept in these hot trailers and made to sleep in there and beat each other up. And I mean, all that stuff could be looked up. It's all,
I was there when that hole was going on. I mean, the music studio was maybe 50 feet from the hole, which is a bunch of trailers that were put together. All bars on all the windows. You walk in the front door, there's a security guard there, and you had to go through him if you wanted to speak to anybody there. Anyway, go on, Matt. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, no, it's fine. So anyway, we wound up, after about 5 years or so, we wound up going to Clearwater Beach, and we went to Florida basically because my family was there. Also, Amy was having trouble with the thyroid. We didn't know what it was at the time, but she couldn't get warm. So I thought, well, we'll go to Florida. It's warm there, And it turned out we wound up on Clearwater Beach to be close to family, but also there was a lot of furniture auctions there that we were interested in the nearby area. The church freaked out that we were in Clearwater.
Yeah.
And they probably spent, I'm not exaggerating to say, they probably spent $1 million to harass us. They hired a whole team of private investigators that were on us 24/7. They rented the little cottage next to the apartment that we were renting. They followed us everywhere. I mean, if we flew back to Seattle to see family, they flew back to Seattle and were waiting for us at the airport. They harassed her non-Scientology family. It was they put out a magazine about my wife and some others and stuff like that. It was pretty over the top. I mean, the one time we had a film crew come to interview Amy about something. The next morning, there was 2 dead rats in the little pool that we was swimming every day. It was trying to intimidate us.
Yeah.
We wound up talking to the St. Pete Times, which became headlines there in Clearwater about the different abuses and things like that. And the church was trying to say that, David Miscavige, he never beat anybody, but all these people speaking out, not all of them, but a bunch of them, they ones that were beating people up at the international base, right? And it had these affidavits, legal affidavits, sworn affidavits by some of these top executives still there at the international base, time, form, and event of these different guys beating people close to death. We were worried about this and that. And this was over, their affidavits covered years, right?
Yeah.
We got a copy of this from one of the newspaper guys that had received this as trying to say that this is really what the truth is. And I saw this and I said, I mean, this is proof. What else proof do you need that there was an environment up there where people were beating each other up, and the top of the Scientology was watching this and observing it, and nothing was ever done to change it.
Right.
So was it accepted, or was these people not able to change it? Either way, if they're the guys that run Scientology, there needs to be somebody from the outside to step in and sort this out.
Right.
So we sent that, Amy and I sent that to the FBI. The FBI came to Clearwater and they interviewed us for 2 days. And they went around to different parts of the country and interviewed other guys too that were witness to a lot of this kind of stuff. And we spoke, Amy wrote a book. We spoke out on radio, TV. Amy went over to Europe. She spoke to some of the government officials over there that were interested in, Scientology is a destructive cult and what it could mean to their country and their citizens. And I mean, we've done a lot to expose the situation, which is about all we can do at this point, is like take responsibility to at least warn people what's going on now.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, Matt, you don't fail until you stop trying.
Right.
So and I'll tell you, your story is really unique. I've never heard a story like this, to be honest with you. And that's why I'm going to just keep on going on. I'll never stop doing this. I'll keep on speaking out. Somewhere, someplace, somebody, maybe in a governmental position or an influential position to the IRS, is going to have the balls to say, hey, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, and investigate them and find out that they're not a church at all. And if they can take away their tax exemption, I think that's going to be the most effective way to have them dry up. As it is now, unless you are living under a rock, or maybe you're a shepherd in Antarctica or some goddamn situation, you're not going to walk into a church if you have any inkling as to what's going on. So the people that are there are in a state of mind that the people in the bubble, they accept this. They work.
They don't know about it too, though. There's so much information control. They don't know about what's going on the outside, and they don't know what's going on from base to base. You know how that is. I mean, I used to say, if there was no Scientology in Los Angeles, us guys in Clearwater, Florida, we wouldn't even know it because we have no contact.
That's absolutely true. But this is the way you operate if you want to entrap people, and that's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key thing for every cult is information control. Yeah. And they've got it down. You can't watch a TV, listen to a radio, pick up a book, a newspaper. You can't get out of there to travel. You're shut off, and you just believe what you're being told.
Yeah, this is amazing. Matt, I want to thank you for coming on. Do you have anything else to say? Because those
are the main things. I mean, if there's ever, people want to ask you questions or want something to be covered, we could take that up as its own thing. But that's kind of a brief, quick cover of the 27 years and 13 years out. Well,
I tell you, it is, I say fascinating, but not fascinating in a glorious way.
Right.
A very macabre way for you to have experienced this and come out on the other end, and you and Emmy are successful at what you're doing, and you're leading a nice life, which I'm very happy for the both of you.
Thank you.
Anyway, I just want to chime in, Ron. We do have some questions from the chat if you guys have time to take it.
Sure.
You have time? I do.
I got time.
Okay. So Phil Vacation asks, are Matt and Amy still being stalked by Scientology?
Matt?
I don't think so. What happened was the last time the guy was parked outside my house. This was about, I guess, 4 years ago. We have a bus stop there. We had a bus stop there where all these little kids would get, dropped off. And after this guy sat out in front of my house for 2 days, I went out and I said to him, I said, hey, I see you're like eyeballing all these little kids getting off the bus, right? And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not here for the kids, right? And I said, well, I don't know. You're not from this neighborhood, and you're parked here facing where the little kids get dropped off. And I said, I'm going to call the police, right? So I called the police with him sitting right there, and he took off and he was gone. Next day, a whole different guy shows up. So I thought, okay. I walk out there and I say, can you pass on a message? And he said, yeah. I said, you tell him that if you're still here in a half hour, I'm moving back to Clearwater, and they ain't going to like it. And I was for real. I was going to move back to Clearwater. I mean, they had tried so hard to drive me out of Clearwater. I was going to move right back there where people know me, where they make their money. And I had some ideas of how I was going to, make a problem for them. And I didn't do that the last time I was in Clearwater. I didn't touch any of their public, any of their staff. I didn't try to get the message to their staff and public, but I was going to this time. And that was the last time they parked outside my house.
There you go. End this off. I want to thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure having you on. Okay, buddy?
Okay. Thank you very much.